I will be the first to tell you, I'm not nice, I'm kind. And a lot of people use those two words interchangeably, but let me let you know that they have two very different meanings. And even if they look similar in action, they feel different, the motivation behind them is different, and often their results are different. So today we're going to break down nice versus kind, how being nice is actually harming us, and what we can do about it. Before we move forward, let me just say, this is not about convincing you to not be good to people anymore or to be harsh under the guise of keeping it real. This is not even about me telling you to put yourself first all the time. This is about moving in authenticity and self-preservation, even as we move through the world loving and even serving others. You're listening to Seen with Serena Kumara, a podcast all about the journey of coming home to ourselves, the unlearning, the remembering, and the returning to what's always been true about who we are and what we deserve. If I had to break it down, I would say the thing that separates being kind and being nice is authenticity and motivation. Authenticity meaning is your yes or no come from a genuine place. A motivation is what drives the action. In my opinion, kind actions are motivated by genuine care, alignment, and integrity, right? Things that are connected to our value systems. However, decisions that we make when we're being nice are typically motivated by appearance, approval, or avoidance of conflict. Basically, kindness is based on internal things and nice is motivated by external things. Now, in real life, overextending, aka being too nice, can show up a lot of different ways. Sometimes it's saying yes to something, not only when you mean no, but when you don't actually have an answer yet. So you automatically say yes because you know that's what's expected and you want to keep the peace, right? Also softening your voice or over-explaining so that nobody perceives you as difficult. Like laughing at a disrespectful joke or a questionable comment because you don't want to make it awkward in the room. And apologizing for having needs, emotions, or boundaries. And this one I'm breaking down because I think we don't even think about it sometimes. The example that keeps coming to mind is a need like allergies. Think of you or your friend who has severe allergies, and when you go out to restaurants, you're going to have to ask the questions about ingredients, and you might have to make a bunch of adjustments. And we lead with apologizing and maybe even apologizing multiple times. Now, it's not your fault that if you have onions, your throat's going to close up. And I'm not advocating for entitlement, but just the thought that that's something to apologize for instead of just being very kind when ordering, being very considerate, right? Think about why our brains run to apologizing. And that's only one example. But if we really sat down and thought about it, we could probably look day to day at how many times we do things that are rooted in niceness and how it chips away at our energy. Being too nice has a real cost. It sneaks up on us and it piles up on us little by little so we don't see it coming. But it's not only exhausting, it's eroding. Constantly saying yes to the things that don't serve us is draining. Always having to be in a state of performance is draining. And I just feel like when you're in a constant state of denying your own boundaries and not enforcing them and hiding the way that you really feel about something, I think that can affect your actual inner compass and your discernment. You know how people will say this person is lying so much they're starting to believe their lies? I feel like it impacts us in that way. And that's not really good for our self-esteem or relationship with ourselves altogether. And I found out that it can actually impact our nervous system. So basically, our bodies are wired to recognize truth and authenticity. When we're always suppressing that truth to keep the peace or harmony, it can actually keep our nervous system in a low-key threat state, which means basically we're never really at ease. And don't that sound exhausting? So really, our bodies can't even relax when our spirits are pretending. That's wild. Here's the thing. Regardless of whether we've had the language or heard it said out loud or not, I believe that many of us know deep down that being nice doesn't serve us, but we still keep choosing it. And so we might tell ourselves, it's just who I am. I need to get better at not people pleasing, or I've watched my grandma move like that and my aunties and my mother move like that, so I move like that. Those things are all true, but as we know on this show, we dig a little deeper. I said it before, I'm going to say it again, but I think it's important. There is conditioning that we all grew up in that we just view as systemic norms or just the way it is. We don't question it. We don't push against it. We just take it for granted like it's always been. We just internalize it. Those conditions were designed to benefit a very small group of people that most of us do not fall in. So that internalization that the rest of us have done doesn't help us. It impacts the way we view and treat ourselves as well as others, the way we see the world, and the way we move throughout it. It's part of the reason why making certain decisions and changes can be extra challenging for us. And so I break down the systemic reasons why we struggle with things in hopes we can really unlearn the root of it and really heal it so we can move forward. Many of us were taught that niceness keeps us safe, lovable, and acceptable. That got embedded in us a few ways, but I want to talk about just two. I want us to talk about the concept of right to comfort. You may have heard of it. It may be new to you, but if you are unfamiliar, first of all, let me give credit. It was coined by Robin DiAngelo. But it is the social expectation that members of the dominant group are always entitled to emotional comfort. And the members of the marginalized group are trained to protect that comfort, which could mean lying or silencing themselves or harming themselves. And so if we think about even today, sometimes it seems like when injustices are called out, people are in an uproar because why are we always talking about it right now? And that seems to be a bigger problem than the actual injustice. That's connected to right to comfort. So that concept has been driven home lots of ways. In school, when we're told to be respectful, but that's really interchangeable with be quiet and do what you're told no matter what. In family dynamics, when the idea of avoiding disrespect towards elders really just means kind of letting them run wild and say and do anything and not say anything back and not have any boundaries. And even in the workplace, in customer-facing positions, this idea that the customer is always right. You have to be nice or you risk your job, no matter what's happening, no matter what you're receiving from customers. When we talk about the right to comfort and we interchange dominant group for words like authority figures or elders, even the popular one or the popular group, we can easily see how we've internalized it in our everyday lives. Many of us essentially learned to shapeshift to keep others comfortable, even if it meant that we were disappearing slowly. Let's talk about praise of self-containment. It's essentially the idea that being quiet, non-reactive, and low maintenance makes us strong and admirable. So in real time, that looks like equating stoicism and calmness with professionalism, intelligence, and a personal control. And then any kind of emotional display as being disruptive or ghetto or aggressive or my favorite, dramatic. There's this centering of having like an emotional restraint and a real fear of open conflict. And because we give credit around here, I got that from Tima Okun's white supremacy culture framework, if you want to look her up. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Capitalism centers, rewards, and even requires the productivity to be at the center. Anything that gets in the way of doing that, that includes your feelings and your exhaustion, is getting pushed to the side. So even today, capitalism rewards the workers that don't get tired, they never burn out, they don't complain, right? Whether it's said out loud or not, what model employee and team player usually means someone who just suffers quietly. We ain't got to hear about it and it doesn't keep you from working. You figure it out on your own. And then for women, there's an added level. So there was a time period in, I believe it was the 19th century, that we called the cult of domesticity. And essentially it was this dominant social ideology that was technically for middle and upper class white women that really defined what womanhood was and should be. And it had a whole lot of ideas, many of which we're still struggling to let go of. But some of them were praising meekness, submissiveness, and emotional suppression for women specifically. And because the women that was written for were seen as the pinnacle, anything outside of anything on that list was viewed as lower. And so created certain stereotypes that many of us have to fight to overcome or push really hard against, which could be part of why varying versions of being nice feel like the only option. Essentially, we were taught that withholding ourselves made us worthy, but that ended up costing us our joy. So now we can see that these sometimes subconscious decisions to overextend, to say yes when we mean no, to not stand up for ourselves, to sit there and take it, were never really ours. Not only are they not serving us, they're actually exhausting us. And I'm going to tell you exactly why. The performance that being overly nice requires is labor. I think it's so important to call a thing because that ensures that you see it for what it is, not just effort. Think of it as labor. Whether it's physical or not, labor impacts our mood, our body, and our clarity. And there are several kinds of labor that many of us don't know. And so we write things off without giving them the proper weight of what they are. Number one, emotional labor. And that can look like suppressing how we feel to regulate or protect how someone else feels. Stuff like smiling when you're offended so that you don't upset anybody else, as opposed to calling it out. Then there's cognitive labor. Now, this one was new to me. Essentially, it's when you're in a constant state of self-monitoring and calculating and filtering to make sure that you don't come across a certain way. Obviously, that's rooted in how you're perceived by others and trying to control that, right? But it's exhausting. So think about times when you want to say something, but you type and retype the text 5 times, or you're in a conversation and you say the same thing 2 or 3 times because you want to make sure that you're not misunderstood. Draining. And the last one I'm going to mention is energetic labor. That's when you basically are holding space or extending energy to someone else, and it becomes really problematic when you're doing that from an already drained place. That was a tough one for me to recognize as labor. It took for me to not just be energetically drained or even mentally drained. It took for me to get financially drained, because the kind of work, spirit-centered work that I do, it doesn't work when I'm tired. And I didn't realize I was having all these little energy leaks because people just assume, and I'm people too. I assume this about myself, but people just assume that because the right advice comes natural and the gift of sight comes natural and it's not hard for me to access it. Oh, it's nothing. Let me just, call her real quick. But every time I gave a little of that energy, it's like I didn't realize, babe, there's a limited amount, that you have access to at any one time. And if you give it all away, you're going to be tired. And so in that way, being nice actually costs me money. Cut that off real quick. Outside of just draining us, eventually, niceness can actually reroute our entire life. And here's how. We continue to spend energy and time and thoughts and take steps towards the things that we don't want. So we build more of it, physically, but also energetically. We build relationships that don't really serve us because the bonds we're building are devoid of our real boundaries because we're not setting them, because we're being too nice. Sometimes we miss opportunities that really require us to stand in our truth because you don't see them because you're too busy focused on the thing that doesn't serve you, and or you're too tired. We might even attract things that we don't have the energy to maintain. The thing you wanted, the thing you prayed for, the thing you've been manifesting. It shows up. And I'm telling you because I've done this. It shows up. You don't have the bandwidth to do it in that moment because you spent everything you have on what you thought you were obligated to do. And for a person like myself, and maybe a person like you, all of that will come to a screeching halt for you. Everybody hits a wall eventually. The connections that are built on nice don't survive because now all the nice is shut off. And they looking at you like, when did you turn into a raging bitch? I didn't. All the boundaries are hitting at once and they're confused. Sometimes that happens in the workplace. So it looks like you quiet quit. You just set up different boundaries than you had. Well, now, because the whole time you've been saying, yes, sure, pick me. And now you're not doing that anymore. It looks like you're behaving poorly in the workplace. Then we lose our job. Things like that. And I'll say it like this. In my opinion, inauthentic decisions do not invite aligned opportunities. And therefore, don't allow for us to build an aligned life. Again, this is not about moving away from niceness. and moving into meanness. This is about stepping into kindness. I think it's more loving. I think the truth is always a gift. I think there's always a kind and considerate way to deliver it. It might take effort to find it. Sometimes the gift that comes from kindness is the opportunity to build an authentic relationship or give somebody else the opportunity to see what they can do, right? Or for them to build another relationship with whoever can help them with the thing you said no to. Sometimes it's the gift of being able to positively impact a different way or a different group of people or in a different area. Maybe the way you're overextending yourself doesn't really use your actual gifts. You walk away, you can move towards something where you can really make a difference. Moving away from niceness and into kindness does take time and practice, but there are some small changes that we can make that can help push us in that direction. I did this and it changed my life. Someone asked you to do something, you don't have an answer, tell them you need to think about it. Don't just automatically say yes. That gives you a chance to check in with yourself and your priorities, your schedule, but also your values. Is this important to me? How would this serve me or anybody else or something I care about? It allows you to check for alignment. Another thing is to reassess your priorities. I think sometimes we just move as if certain things are our priorities without actually thinking about it or sitting down and deciding which priorities are in what order and why. What you're actually doing, how you're feeling, like, why is this on my list? Because we make decisions based on our priorities. So we look at the decisions we've made against what is actually a priority to us. That's how we eliminate and move things up and down the list. Another thing is start calling things what they are. That decision to use the word labor is an intentional one. People think I'm being extra. I'm not. I want you to think about what it means. Using words like harm versus discomfort. People get that mixed up all the time. And so instead they'll use words like hurt, when what they really sometimes mean is discomfort. Sometimes they mean harm, and that increases the intensity and it changes the category. But sometimes what they really mean is uncomfortable or discomfort. And you can make a decision with that awareness. Using the word that we mean helps us to think about things differently, which of course helps us to do things differently. Now, this one is really helpful when it comes to teaching folks your boundaries without it being too intense. If you feel funny about it, it's just not performing your feelings. So what that looks like is if somebody does something and they apologize and you don't think it was okay, you don't say it's okay. You say, thank you for saying that, or I appreciate it, right? If somebody is laughing at your expense and you don't like it and you don't feel comfortable to tell them that's incredibly offensive or cuss them out or whatever, you just don't laugh. If somebody asks you how you're feeling, you tell them the truth. And I get it. It's real life. It might be tough to not doctor it up a little, but do your best to tell the truth about what it is. That's how we build authentic relationships. And that's how we avoid resentment. Because a lot of times that resentment is what has us permanently exiting relationships. And sometimes it can be avoided by just letting people see what's true for you. Sometimes people don't know they're causing harm and they would stop if they knew. But by the time we give them any clue that something's not cool, we hit our wall, child, and there's no coming back from it. Now, before we get into this week's affirmation, I just want to stop for Serena's reality check moment. I exist in the real world, so I understand that sometimes our circumstances are our circumstances and we have to do what we have to do. AKA, if you know you are in a workplace where authenticity will not be received well and you needed to pay your bills, you are still honoring yourself and being authentic. If you do what you have to do, you won't be there forever. This week's affirmation is, I call in supportive and authentic friendships. Lord, we can't make this up. So let me ask you, what is one area of your life where you are performing niceness that you're willing to make a shift? And what's one thing that you can do starting now to support that shift? All right, y'all. Well, I love you. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, comment, ask a question. Tell me what you want to talk more about. And I'll see you next week. Love you. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, like, and drop a comment. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, follow the show, leave a review, and share it with someone you love. You can find me on Instagram at Seen with Serena and at milkandhoneyproject.com. Until next time, be wildly, radically, and unapologetically good to yourself. Love you.